Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Oh, woke up this morning with
I am the Reverend Lucata Mjumbe, and I am the Executive Director of the Alabama African American Civil Rights Heritage Sites Consortium, and welcome to the Stayed on Freedom podcast. This Stayed on Freedom episode takes a closer look at an Alabama town that is known mostly for its football championships and famous football coaches, rather than its fight for freedom and equality. Nevertheless, on June 9th, 1964, that town, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, stepped into history when young people, led by a dynamic young minister, Reverend T.Y. Rogers, were determined to challenge racist segregation laws. What happened on that day, now known as Bloody Tuesday, happened a year before Selma's Bloody Sunday. And while today it is somewhat forgotten, it is critically important to the complete telling of the full story of the civil rights movement. In the consortium, we seek to protect authentic stories. And we go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, for an examination and a remembering of Bloody Tuesday. This episode is less like a traditional podcast and is more like a introduction, a sneak preview of a documentary film. A short film that has been put together with the help of award-winning documentarian and filmmaker Dwight Cameron, by our videographer Marcus January, and by the people of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And for that, we give thanks for the opportunity to look back in order to be able to look forward.
Hello, my name is Irene Bird, and I'm a foot soldier of Bloody Tuesday in Tuscaloosa, June 9, 1964.
I am Deborah Gamble, and I'm a foot soldier for life.
My name is Harrison Taylor. I was a 17-year-old foot soldier in the movement.
My name is William Wells, and I am a foot soldier for life.
Bloody Tuesday is one of the last great untold stories of the movement, and it involves some of the most important actors of 1964. Reverend King was re-engaging Alabama with great energy in early 1964. He assembled the SCLC in Montgomery in early March and said he was bringing the movement to Alabama with a greater ferocity than ever before. In March of 1964, King basically brought Reverend Rogers to Tuscaloosa, installed him at First African, and on March 8th preached a sermon that promised that Rogers would lead the movement and they wouldn't stop until they had equality and freedom.
Well, the civil rights movement was a young people thing. Druid High School and Stillman College students was the force that changed Tuscaloosa. Reverend Rogers come to town, and he was outsider, but Dr. Martin Luther King recommended him to come to Tuscaloosa. First, he didn't have no support from Holland, no adults, but they started gradually coming in, and being a part of it. People, criticized him. Black people, white, everybody. He coming and stirring up trouble. He doing this and that, breaking peace. Got the race thing stirred up. Druid High School and Stillman College students were the massive force behind this, because our adults was afraid of losing their jobs.
I went to Druid High School, and they had a reputation. And that reputation was it. I was a majorette. I had fun. I enjoyed life. But yes, things started to change as we got older and as we met the obstacles and confronted them firsthand. And June 9, 1964, Bloody Tuesday as we call it, was firsthand.
Rogers organized hundreds, thousands of black men and women from not only Tuscaloosa, but from West Alabama to picket stores, to march in the streets, to try to sit on lunch counters that had been forbidden to them for generations. The more they marched, the more violent it became. Repeatedly, white citizens would grow in numbers and would douse them with acid, shoot them with pellet guns, would beat them. Sometimes the police would stop the violence, sometimes they would join in.
When we used to go to the courthouse, it was black on there, black fountain, white fountain. And then we always had to go to the back door or we wasn't served downtown Woodward. We could smell the food, but we couldn't eat the food. But the black people prepared the food. And that was wrong.
All this came to a head on June 9, 1964, where Rogers decided to double down and create the largest movement in Tuscaloosa ever. He assembled nearly 600 people to meet him at his church, at First African, and on June 9th, that morning, they were going to march from the church to the new county courthouse, which was segregated. It's only a third of a mile away, but they never made it. As they were leaving the church, they didn't realize that it had been surrounded by over 70 law enforcement officers, police, sheriff's deputies, also members of the game wardens, and other officers from around the area. And they were backed up by Klansmen, and also the sheriff had deputized white citizens to help prevent this march.
That night before, we had a big mass meeting, and Reverend Rogers spoke and got us all fired up, and we sung the songs, and God had us fired up. And the next morning, he explained to us that night what we wanted to do, what our goals was, and how we were going to do it. That next morning, we was getting ready to leave out. We had sung our, the freedom songs and had some speeches. As we went out, the police stopped us and told us there wasn't going to be no march that day. So they arrested all our leaders.
We were told that we were to, when they were arrested, the leaders were going to be arrested. Reverend Rogers knew that. And he said, when we are arrested, don't turn back. He said, get to downtown, to the courthouse by any means possible, and drink from the water fountain and drink, and use the restrooms that were marked white. And so that was our goal, and we had it in our hearts and in our minds, and we did our singing. And when we left out, we were jubilant, we were marching, we marched out of the church, and they headed down the stairs. We were pretty much over in this area. I was over to the right. Church, my brother and I. All of a sudden we heard this screaming and this hollering.
I got hit in the side with a cattle prod. I remember that well. What was the purpose of the cattle prod? Is to get that cow moving. And I assume it was to get me moving as well. Well, the only place for me at that point in time was to run back into the church, because I felt that was the only safe place that I could find. Little did I know what would happen in that church. I really didn't know what happened to all the others. My friend, I didn't know, but I know what happened to me.
So they pushed us, told us to get back in the church, pushed us back in the church. We went in the church. Next thing I know, the fire hoses were coming through and breaking the glasses. Tear gas was being shot into the church.
When they threw the tear gas in the church, I was in the church. My head got full, real full of tear gas. And when I made it home, my head had blown up like this. But my mother wouldn't take me to the hospital at that time because, we had Klansmen staying from my mama's house to down the road was the Klansmen, and they watched everything we did.
So we actually never got outside of the church. Many of us never got outside of the church. People started to crawl up under the bench, up under the pews. They would open up closet doors, go into the closet doors, and just run into the back of the church, trying to get out of the church.
And you couldn't stay in that church with that tear gas. You had to come out. And they surrounded the church with sheriff, police, and deputies. As we come out there, he put the stick on you, nightclubs, belly clubs, and everything else. And it was a tough day that day. I mean, it was really tough.
We went out of the church and we started down 10th Street. By the time we got to the Murphy, what is now the Murphy Museum, and put our foot over into the street, the paddy wagon came up and arrested us and took us downtown, and we were booked into the jail. But that didn't dampen our spirits, because while we were in jail, we were singing freedom songs, and they kept telling us, if you all don't stop singing those freedom songs, we're going to turn the hose on you and all of that. And so we was just saying, take your chance, because we got louder.
These 500 or so people were a mixture of men and women and children. The youngest we know was close to 9 years old. And they were shown no mercy. As these black citizens left the church, most were disorientated, but a few were able to cut across the nearby cemetery to black neighborhoods behind them. Many ran to a local barbershop, which became a de facto aid station. Many were arrested. Close to 100 went to jail that day. 33 went to the hospital.
The day after the Bloody Tuesday, I think the black community was kind of upset. They were shocked about what took place in the church. Fire hoses, tear gas, and broke up all the beautiful window panes and things. And the young people was excited because we thought we had made a difference and things was going to change. Whites, I think, were shocked about what took place in our city and how it was handled. And I think then we started coming together as not as black and white, but as people, trying to make our city a better place. And I think by we working together, being a part of each other and trying to understand one another, talking, it was able to make a change in Tuscaloosa. In my opinion, one of the finest cities anywhere.
What can I say? I was one of the fortunate ones. At some point in time, I was let go. I didn't go to jail. I was told to go as one of many, straight home or wherever. Go and do not look back, actually. I lived in a direction which was south side, but I went west with the crowd because I was not going by myself. So wherever everybody else was going, I went toward Druid. And from there, back home in a different direction. What can I say? It was an experience, but it taught me to have guts. Later, the gut to take a dare and step out on faith.
Maxie Thomas symbolizes the enormous violence of these days. He nearly lost his life on Bloody Tuesday. He was hit in the head with what appears to have been either a cattle prod or a nightstick as he left the church, and immediately fell to the ground. And according to a witness, began to bleed profusely. And most people who watched this assumed he wasn't going to live. But that act of violence was rooted in an effort to act nonviolently. He had stepped in front of that club to protect a woman who was next to him. So he was literally trying to live out King's belief in nonviolent social justice and social movements. And he nearly paid a price with his life. His story continues, though, because when he's brought to the jail, he's bleeding so badly that people he's jailed with begin to raise a ruckus. And the warden and the jailers come to see what's happening. They see Maxie and they're worried that this guy might die in our custody. So they take him to a doctor who, according to Maxie, was a white man who wanted nothing to do with him and sutured him roughly without anesthesia, without properly preparing and cleansing the wound, and sent him back to jail. In that regard, he symbolized the fear everyone felt in that church that day. Would they see their loved ones again that night? Would they be able to go home and kiss their children goodnight? No one knew that for sure that day.
I love Maxie. Maybe 3 months ago, Maxie received a street named in his honor. I think it was so deserving. So deserving.
Reverend T.Y. Rogers' death was devastating to the community, and it was always suspicious of how he died and the time of his death. But and we've had a lot of people come, and like I said before, in my opinion, he's one of the greatest leaders ever come through this city.
So Reverend Rogers died a very, very young man. He died in Atlanta in a car crash. He had just finished an SCLC meeting and was leaving Atlanta to come to Tuscaloosa. And the official report, from what I understand, is that it was a rainy night and he spun out of control and hit a tree. But no one believed that in Tuscaloosa or across the state of Alabama.
My husband always acted as if he was Reverend Rogers' first lieutenant. He really loved and admired Reverend Rogers and probably would have done most anything that Reverend Rogers asked him to do. He followed him, he worked with him, and I have family members that were secretaries to him, but my husband was never the same after Reverend Rogers died. Never.
And the thing about it now is, we was a year before Selma. Selma, look at these statistics here. Selma had 50 go to the hospital. We had 33. Selma had 120 to be arrested. We had 94. But Selma got all the publicity. What happened in Allison was the Freedom Bus riders come through and they burned the bus up. They got a big grant. Tuscaloosa, why not Tuscaloosa? It's been said, I don't know how true it is, but it makes sense. It's been said that Tuscaloosa had agreed to newspaper, the TV, and the radio not to do anything to mention this. Why? Because George Wallace, the year before, had stood in the schoolhouse doors and had a bad publicity across this country. So they don't want no more publicity about it.
What I want from people is to understand the magnitude of that day. Like I said, we didn't get news coverage. I didn't say that earlier, but we didn't get news coverage for various reasons. I don't know all the reasons, but I can tell you about Selma in 65. I can tell you about Bull Connor in Birmingham in 63. I could tell you about the bus boycotts in Montgomery. Why don't people know about the Bloody Tuesday event in Tuscaloosa? I want them to know about it. I want it to take its rightful place in history. I want people to know about it. I want my children to know about it. I'm in the fourth quarter of my life. So it is something that I want to pass on. And that's all we can do.
We've come a long way, but we still got some ways to go. Our justice system is not fair enough. Something needs to be said and something got to be done and show our young people that it's a better life out there. You should want that life. Let's go get that life.
In popular culture, we remember Montgomery, Birmingham, Selma, but we must also remember Tuscaloosa's Bloody Tuesday and the important role that it played in the larger civil rights movement. Thank you for watching our Stayed on Freedom podcast. Until next time, let us continue to preserve, to protect, and to promote the legacy of our freedom struggle.
Walking and talking with my mind.